Good morning, everybody. This is season 3 of our podcast sessions, and today we're going to have a wonderful interview with Tim and Yvette, all the way from Vietnam. We call our podcast session Voice of Reason. There was a time when there was a need for us just to start to speak truth into so many inaccuracies, and we felt like we needed to do a podcast interviewing people from all over the world, just giving good, godly perspective on so many issues and so many themes that we do have in the Word of God. So this is part and parcel of our podcast series today. Obviously a bit different. In season 3, we'll do it in front of live audiences like this morning. So it's wonderful. Give a shout so that everybody can hear you guys. Yeah. Wonderful to have the congregation with us this morning. Now, before time goes on too much, I want to go to these guys. We've got Tim and Yvette. Yvette is a South African. So let's give a shout for South Africans in Vietnam. And then, unfortunately, Tim is from Australia. And I know as Springboks, we don't have a great, no, it's wonderful to have you with us as well, Tim. So, give them a great round of applause. Awesome. So I'm going to start. Just maybe, Tim, give us a bit background on how you guys met and how you ended up in the nation of Vietnam. Let's try there until it gets through. There we go.
Thank you very much for the lovely intro, and it's very exciting to be here, and just thank you so much for allowing us to worship with you and share with you. So Vietnam, it's not either of our countries, and we met there actually, so we didn't meet in Australia or South Africa. I've been there for 13 years now, and I first went there on an Australian government program as a volunteer, and then I really just felt led to stay there. Actually, I really felt God confirming that in church while I was in Vietnam, that after my 1 year was finished with the volunteer program, that He wanted me to stay. And at that time, I hadn't met Yvette yet, so that was one good reason to stay. Now it's been 13 years. I've set up a business there, and we also have joined an organization just to have accountability and to be connected with what God is doing around the world as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yvette, tell us a bit about how you got into Vietnam.
Yeah, so my story goes back a bit further. When I was really little, my brother is 12 years older than me, and he went overseas to work abroad, and that really awakened something in me to want to live and work abroad as well. And after high school finished, I did 2 years of service year for Christ. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And there God really touched my heart while I was on a missions trip in Bosnia, and really confirmed that He wanted me to go into missions. And after I did service year, I kind of started working and studying, and my life just kind of took the normal detour, and I kind of forgot about what God had spoken about missions. And it was only several years later, after I'd gotten married, I realized that my husband at the time was having an affair. So I really fought for my marriage, and during that time, God kind of reawakened that desire to live and work abroad for Him. And my ex-husband never wanted to work in that kind of sense, but I still had that desire in my heart, and God reawakened that at the time. And during the divorce process, God kind of just said, but nothing's keeping you in South Africa anymore besides your parents. And I thought, okay, but where would you want me to go? So I started praying about where He wanted me to go, and I thought I'd go somewhere in Africa, because I'd been on mission trips in Africa before. But very randomly, God just started putting Vietnam in different places, in magazines and on the TV and in a book I was reading. And so I started praying about it, and I really felt God confirming that's where He wanted me to go. And I was working for my church at the time, and I really knew the value of community, especially during my divorce. I really experienced such valuable community and support from my church. So I really wanted to plug in straight away with a church in Vietnam. So I Googled, and I saw there were 2 churches, one in the north and one in the south. And the church in the north, on their website, was one word that God had confirmed is my new season. So I knew that's the church that he wanted me to go to. And yeah, then kind of my ex-husband really wanted to finalize the divorce. So I didn't have peace about that at first, but after a while, God confirmed that he's releasing me. And I then went over to Vietnam and got connected with that church, and we met at that church. So, yeah.
Well, the story is actually a bit more in detail because she phoned and or she sent an email. Is that right? And then he replied on that one.
So I say that we met online, which is kind of true.
So a few months before I left for Vietnam, I emailed the church and I asked them if there's any group that I can get involved in and things like that. And no one replied at first. So a couple of weeks later, I looked on the website again and I saw that there was a young adults group. So I emailed the leader of the young adults group, and Tim was the leader at the time. But because I was still going through my divorce, like I was definitely not interested in any relationship at the time. But so he said, when the day that I arrived, there was actually a young adults meeting that was going on. So he said he'll arrange for someone to come and pick me up. And that person couldn't make it. So he came instead. So my first motorbike ride on the back of a motorbike was with him. And yeah, we became friends, and I shared my story with him, what I'd been through, and he very patiently he liked me, but he did not pursue me at all and gave me this space and time to heal and to recover, which is the season I felt God was calling me into, and I just really respected that as well. And we became really good friends, and over time, my mom actually joked, because she said in Facebook photos, she could see like our group of friends, and with every photo, Tim was closer and closer and closer. So she kind of spotted that something was going on. So yeah, that's how we met, and yeah, a couple of months later, we started dating, and now we've been there. I've been there 11 years now, and now we have 3 kids. So.
Yeah, awesome. Wonderful 3 children. I think some of them are in the Sunday school at the moment, but beautiful family. Tim, tell us about the whole idea of ministry in Vietnam, how you guys came to be involved with it, and what's happening at the moment.
Yeah, so maybe I should start with, we both knew God had called us to Vietnam, and then we met there and got married, so we were like, okay, that's one good reason that God brought us both to Vietnam. We were sure of that. But after the marriage, after we got married in South Africa and Australia and came back to Vietnam, we had this situation where we were like, God, is this where we're actually supposed to still be? Like, did you have something else in mind for us? And he really told us that, no, I didn't call you to go anywhere else, so stay here where you are in Vietnam. So we're like, okay, so what is it that you have for us? And he brought us through different seasons of ministry. The season we are in at the moment for the last few years, we know he's called us there to focus on creation care. And I'm not sure if that's a familiar term with people here, but God really has put on our hearts to care for the environment, to live sustainably. And we thought, okay, how does that connect with our faith? So it's been a bit of a journey the last few years. And yeah, maybe I can share a little bit about creation care. So what we've been learning is that my work is, I'm an architect by background, and I'm working in green buildings, so trying to make buildings more energy efficient, water efficient, better for the environment, and better for health and comfort as well. So I've been on a journey learning that God really cares about His creation and wants us to join with Him in sustaining it and looking after it. So it goes right back to Genesis 1:28, where He says, you know, be fruitful and multiply, and that's a picture of abundance of creation, all the resources and all the beautiful nature that He's given us. But He also does this very interesting thing where He has authority over all creation, but He says, have dominion over creation. And I think that has many different ways you can interpret it, but basically he's given us some of his authority to manage this beautiful creation that he's given to us. And then later on in Colossians 1:20, it says, Christ is reconciling all things on heaven and on earth to him. And that includes all of his creation, actually the whole universe. So it kind of got me realizing that the gospel is centered around our salvation in Jesus, but actually it's even more broad than that, that he's bringing everything back to him and renewing it to him. So I thought, oh, God cares about my work and cares about the heart that he's given us to care for creation. And there's a lot of issues with the environment that you would know in South Africa, but Vietnam has its own specific issues. Maybe you want to share?
So one thing that's a really big problem that we mentioned to Carl and Hilana on Friday when we met them was that air pollution is a very, very big problem in Vietnam. Pollution in general, but air pollution, there's a lot of rubbish burning and burning of rice fields after the harvest season. There's also a lot of combustion from vehicles. People used to drive bicycles in Vietnam. After the war, they started driving motorbikes, and now, people are more affluent, so everyone's starting to buy cars. So the roads are very congested. There's a lot of air pollution because of that as well. And that's a very, very big problem. There's a lot of cancer because of that, and people are not aware. Sometimes you'll see it looks foggy, and a lot of Vietnamese will call it fog, but it's actually smog, and people are just constantly living in that sort of environment. For us as a family, we've had to buy 3 or 4 air purifiers for our home just to have clean air in the house. And for us, that's just, it really saddens us, especially to see people burning rubbish because they're not even aware that it's harmful to their health. And that is a very big problem across the country, but it's something that we feel almost powerless in because we cannot make any government decisions. We're not there for policy change or anything like that, but we want to see how we can, through our programs and projects that we do in terms of creation care, can make people aware of the health hazards concerning rubbish burning and how pollution affects your health. So we've started doing things with our international church and with a couple of local churches where we do rubbish cleanups, and I think you said you guys do rubbish cleanups as well. So that's just a way that we can show that us as the church really care for not only creation, but for our own communities and for the people in the community. And that is one way that we want to show God's love to our neighbors there.
Maybe just share with us a bit about the government, because it is a communist social government, and how the church operates in such an environment. With us, we can sing loud and we can shout and we can come together in public spaces. What is the limitations and the challenges you guys have?
Yeah, so I should also probably mention here that if at times we're not very specific about some of the things we're talking about, if we're vague, we have to be careful of some things that we say. So, we live in a country that is has a socialist government, officially atheist, but many people are very spiritual. Buddhism and ancestral worship and Confucianism kind of mixed together. So people are very spiritual, but when it comes to government, they're very wary of gatherings, especially related to religious activities and faith. And it is a country that is listed quite high on persecution index for Christians. And that is particularly evident in the more rural areas, the mountainous areas, and with the ethnic minorities that are there. So we can't even go into those areas generally. You need special permission to go there. And there is a lot of underground churches, house churches. when I arrived in Vietnam, as far as I'm aware, there was only one registered evangelical church. And that was throughout the whole country. Since then, I think we're up to 4 registered churches, so things are changing.
Amen.
Yeah, so that's a great thing. And the international church that we are working with has kind of unified the local churches, and with activities such as these cleanups and other volunteer activities, we've actually had a lot of inroads into the city government, and where they can see that Christians are here, whether they've come from overseas or whether they're Vietnamese Christians, Christians are here to do good, to serve the community, to love the community, and they have a positive influence on society. So before Creation Care, we were working with a Christian drug rehab center, and they were doing amazing work that basically the government couldn't achieve by themselves because they didn't have Jesus doing it. So yeah, Jesus was transforming lives in that. And the government was recognizing that and saying, okay, yeah, Christians are doing good here. So in the city that we are in, we experience actually quite a lot of freedom in some ways to express our faith, and a lot of favor, a lot of good connections with the government. And yeah, we're kind of in a bit of a bubble, and we are praying that that will expand through the country, that the favor would extend to those people in rural areas, local people, ethnic minorities, that the favor that we are experiencing from the government, yeah, would expand through the nation.
You guys are in what city?
We're in Hanoi, the capital city, yeah.
Tell us a bit about life in Hanoi and how you cope with, I know temperatures there is like Durban times 22, eh? I don't know. Tell us a bit about the adjustments and the culture.
Yeah. So in Vietnam, they speak the Vietnamese language, which we have learned both individually at various times, and Tim's is way better than mine. So most places you go, they could speak a little bit of English. There's a lot of English teachers that come in, so people do speak a bit of English, but predominantly it's still Vietnamese, so you do need Vietnamese to get by. It is very hot in summer, but it can also cool down in winter. Like just before we left, we had like maybe 8 degrees in the evening and 13 degrees during the day. So, but there's like a constant drizzle in winter normally, but summers can get really hot. We go as a family of 5. We have 1 motorbike, and the 5 of us go together on 1 motorbike.
Wow.
So 1 kid in the front, 1 in the middle, and this little one is strapped to me. So yeah, but we all wear helmets, so don't worry. And they only go about 60 kilometers an hour. So yeah. Oh, hold on. Hanoi is a very quaint place. There's a lot of French influence, so the buildings there are very quaint, and it's just very different to some of the other Asian cities, like Ho Chi Minh City. Is she okay? You don't sit like Papa? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Hanoi has a very quaint feel about it, but we call it a grungy city because it's very dirty and polluted, but it's also very beautiful, and we love where we live. It's developing so rapidly. The city is just growing so much, and there's a lot of buildings going up, big apartment buildings. Maybe you can continue.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it is growing very fast. It's very busy, it's very crowded. So we really enjoy the space in South Africa when we come back. Green grass, that's something that we love. We don't see as much of that in Hanoi. So yeah, the traffic is crazy if you think taxis, but everybody's driving like that. People drive the opposite way on the same road as you, or don't just ignore traffic lights. I struggle with the stop signs here and when the traffic lights are out, because in Vietnam everybody just goes and you find your way. So yeah, all this waiting and stopping here is kind of an adjustment for me. Yeah, so food is amazing, beautiful sauces and herbs and lots of rice and noodles. And Vietnamese people are very open and friendly, and then they don't have the experience of Christian background. So Jesus is very new and very fresh for them. They don't have baggage that some people have from South Africa or from Australia, where I'm from. They're very interested to know who Jesus is. And a lot of people recognize that there is one God who is in charge, but they don't know much about him. Yeah.
So what I can hear from them is the importance of lifestyle and the power of finding a need, and then through meeting that need, you get the gospel across. And we've been busy in our local church now for about the last month or so, speaking about making his name known, but the issue of lifestyle. And it is so important, if we want to see community transformation, to be able to step outside of your own issues and your own challenges, and recognizing the importance of the need outside of self. I think one of the key principles that we're trying to teach our children is always to live from that position of the value of those that are outside of self. And in a country like Vietnam, it is important, it's not like what we did now a week or so ago. We took some microphones and a bus and a team, and you're on the street corners, and you have freedom to do stuff like that. It's actually through a relationship and patience, that these things are settled and done. Speak to us a bit about the local church and the connection to church and community, how important that would be in an environment like this.
Christians number, depending on who you ask, between 0.1% and 1% of the population.
Sure.
So most people don't know another Christian. Most people won't be aware of a church in their local community, even if there is one. So there are Catholic churches which come from the French era, which would stand out in the city. But in terms of church, as we know it, the gathering of people, people aren't very aware of it. So the church is very varied. There are many house churches, and there's some great churches that are kind of planting new house churches and kind of expanding that way, and recognizing that there may not be a gathering of believers in a gathering place, but through house churches we can all have fellowship and community, across cities and across the countryside. There's been, I think we also prayed about that, some issues with unity amongst the local churches as well. So I think that's one thing. If you're praying for Vietnam, please pray for that. And I think the international church, being kind of outside of that, has been one unifying factor for the local churches, which I'm really glad about. We're not separate from the local church. We work together with them for these cleanup days, but also for this movement called Love in Action. I think that's been one thing that has kind of brought all the churches together for a common cause, and to show the community and the government that we are working together as one body. And actually the interesting thing is that often the focus of these community serving days, like the cleanup, but also other things like free medical treatment or even free haircuts. That's one thing the church likes to do, is give free haircuts. Yeah. Often they are focused on a big Christmas event. So it's this lead up of activities where the church comes together, serves the community, invites people to the Christmas event, and then we have a big celebration and people get to hear the good news about Jesus in that. So it's kind of one way of connecting everybody together, even though we are varied in the way that we worship and have had some issues, differences in the past. Everybody gets together for this common cause, and I think that's the exciting thing for us. Yeah.
If we have somebody now in the audience today, a couple that feel like they want to go into a foreign nation, what would you guys tell them to do and not to do? And what is the challenge and what is the adventure of all of that?
You mean Vietnam in particular, or any country?
You can use that as an example.
I think prayer, obviously, is the first one. Our experience and many others that have come to Vietnam, what we've noticed is what you thought you went there to do and what you actually ended up doing is often very different. So we need to keep an open mind to what God is doing and pray and be ready for that point where everything kind of seems like it's falling apart and then something else appears. It seems to be a common theme that a lot of people experience. But I say prayer and also, of course, researching about the country because we've heard stories from other people in our organization in other countries, and we realize that the way to do ministry there, the way to live there is very different. In a Muslim country, Hindu country, the challenges of the believers there are quite different. And so it's good to understand what the situation of the church is in that country and the believers there. And I think recognizing as well that you're not going to be the only Christian there and that you're not necessarily a pioneer there. The church is there in the country that you're thinking of going to. God is already working there. You're going to be going there to join what He's doing. I think having that perspective is really important for preparing to go. And I personally, working as a professional there in architecture and using that gives me a visa, so that allows me to be there. But it's also my passion and the way I worship God there as well. So I would really encourage people not to think that if you are working in a job you may think of as secular, not to think that you cannot serve in another country. God can use that for His kingdom and can use that to bless another nation as well. So there's many varied ways in which we can serve, and this is all building the kingdom and allowing people to encounter Jesus in other communities and in other countries.
I think this is such an important part of what we want to get across. And we're also, addressing this in our Bible studies on Mondays, is the importance of your everyday life. We sort of miss the power of the ordinary, of the mundane things. We miss the effectualness of just going to work, going to school, and living a life of absolute devotion and dedication to the Lord. There's so much power in your testimony. There's so much power in your everyday life. Jesus, for at least the first 30 years of His life, worked as a carpenter, And it was only in the last 3 years of His life that there really was a great ministry opportunity for Him. And I think, like He says, many people, if they go with an idea that I'm going to change this nation, I'm going to impact this nation. I can give a testimony of this. The first time I went to India, I don't know, you guys have this tuk-tuk, three-wheeled cars there as well? At some areas. We've got that in Easter's area. They have a whole community that felt like India when you go there, or feels like India when you go there. But the first time I drove in one of those little things in India with all the people, I thought, Livingston, here I am pioneering a great new thing. And the Lord had to show me, and that's where we got the revelation on that scripture that says, we enter into the labors of others. We enter into not only labors of those who are right there, right now, but even those who've come before us. And in India is Thomas that went to India, the doubting Thomas. And he broke open the evangelism and the message of Christ into India. But to understand that you enter into the labors of others. And right now, even here in South Africa, I feel that we have to challenge this concept and this idea where we feel we're always entitled to get rather than to live to give. Because a lot of people only live to get but not to give. And as a believer, we live powerful life if we live to give. And what do we give? We give Christ through our personality, giftedness, character, through our doing, our work. The Bible actually states that we work not for a man, but we work as unto the Lord. And the way that you work, the productivity and the way you deal with clients, the way you relate to your boss, the way that you, all of these things are powerful tools if we understand the capacity that God has given us and the specificity of the people that He surrounded us with. It's not by coincidence that you know who you know. It's not by coincidence that you're assigned to that specific environment. And South Africa can see a wonderful revival if we as a people start to live for not our own benefit, but for the benefit or the sake of others. It's a beautiful way and powerful way that these guys are living there. Now you've got this little one on your lap. Tell us about the challenges of children, getting them trained in school and all those sort of things. We need to give them a great hand because their kids can speak Afrikaans. Hallelujah. Well done. Even Tim can understand a bit of Afrikaans, you know, so
A bikkie.
a bikkie. Tell us about the challenges with the children.
Yeah, going over, I was single, and that was easy. Being there as a young married is easy, but being there with kids is a completely different story. There's actually a lot of new families that have come to Vietnam with young kids, and I respect those people a lot, because moving to a new country with little kids in tow is no easy task. For us, I think our main challenges initially was schooling. Our kids cannot go to the government schools. You need to be able to speak the local language to go to a government school. There are several other international schools, but they are like private school, high private school prices for international schools. So schooling is very, very expensive. Actually, just after COVID, or before COVID, when our oldest was around 5, 6, we really prayed because we didn't know where we would send him to school. So I started homeschooling in Afrikaans for a while because we just didn't know where we would send him. Getting resources in Afrikaans was very challenging, but thanks to COVID, there's a lot more stuff online now, and that made it a little bit easier. But shortly after COVID, actually at the end of COVID, a small Christian academy opened up where our kids are able to go. Our eldest is going there, which we're very thankful for, and is a huge answer to prayer for us. It's a very small school, and it's for like-minded families. So it's a very international school with kids from all over the world. And for Elijah, our 3-year-old, he is at a small preschool run by a local lady, Miss Ching, and we love her so much. She loves our kids so beautifully. And Kelly is at home with me. And the challenge, I think, with that is, I don't always feel like I'm able to do just be involved in ministry as much as I would, because schooling is not so readily available, and the kids are at home. But God has given me opportunities, amazing opportunities, to minister to young mums with young kids as well, and that's opened many doors for me. Because we just walk with the stroller, and as we see another mum, we connect. I don't know if the same happens. I've never had kids living in South Africa, but that's been a great opportunity for me. But other challenges, and something that is really hard for me, is the lack of clean green space and parks and areas for the kids to play in safety, and of course the air pollution. Like some days, especially during winter when the air pollution is really bad, we just don't go out. We'll check when it's around 150, then we'll go out, but if it's anything higher than that, we don't normally go out. So there are often days where we're just not able to go and play outside just because the air quality is so bad. Oh my God.
Can you believe that, eh? We don't even worry about the air quality in South Africa. That's an incredible benefit. You know, we don't count our blessings, our temperature, eh? They say that they get 100% humidity. My word. Praise the Lord, eh? Some are called, some are sent, and some took a microphone. They really, they are not the Wentworth ones. They are called into that space and that nation.
And we're just thankful that we don't have load shedding, because in summer, you cannot sleep without at least a fan. Most people sleep with air conditioning. No, there's not a single day you can't sleep. You can sleep without a fan or an aircon. And even during the day, we did have one blackout last year, and that was a little bit scary because we were on the 18th floor of an apartment building with no power. Thankfully, they have a generator for the elevator, because otherwise we would be doing stairs with the kids. But yeah, you can't, there's nothing you can do, like it's just too hot.
Tell us a bit about testimonies. Are there specific things that the Lord has done for you or in ministry there? Maybe share one or two of those.
Yeah, maybe I can share one again about the way that this creation care work connects to like gospel work and just connecting the church and community. So it was 2 years ago, we were part of the organizing team for a big cleanup in a city park. And in that park, we collected how many tons of rubbish? I think it was, yes, I think it's around 10 or 15 or something like that, tons of rubbish. Sure. There was just so much there. We had 100 volunteers, 7 churches, including a deaf church. We would join training together. They had somebody training the deaf church as well in sign language. And there was some people that kind of joined that was all Christians, all churches doing the cleanup. And then some people just in the park noticed what we were doing, and they just joined in. They just wanted to join in what was happening. And amongst them, there was one young guy who had arrived in Hanoi 2 days earlier on a bus from the mountains. He was from one of the tribal groups. He didn't have any money, and we found out that he wasn't, he was sleeping in the park. And he just saw us all come and joined in with what we were doing. So in meeting him and talking with him, and we had lunch for free for the volunteers afterwards, so he could have lunch as well. But we were able to connect him to a Christian business that was able to house him, feed him, and train him to do some work. So, and just for context as well, interestingly, you don't really see much poverty in the city because the government doesn't want you to see it. So if you're begging, then they'll often move you along or push you away. So it's not like South Africa or even Australia, like we see homelessness in Australia, but in Vietnam, it's very hard to see and hard to know where these people are. But in doing this activity, we were able to meet this young man, and then he got connected with other local Christians and was able to get work in doing that as well. So that's just the way that it really is loving the community, and people around see it, and they see that, they see the love of Christ in that. So that's just one testimony. Okay, I'll keep going. Just another real story of God really working in an amazing way was, I'll share about another cleanup day. That was last year's one, December just gone by, where we again had 100 volunteers, and this time we wanted to invite not just churchgoers, but anybody who has a business, to invite their colleagues or students from school, to invite others into the work that this Love in Action group is doing. So that was really exciting to be able to involve them in fellowship and get them to see what we're doing. So we had 100 people sign up for another cleanup at another park. And all the hoops you need to go to just to do a cleanup, there was, I think, 8 different people that we needed to get approval from. And it came to 2 days before the cleanup, the final office, the authorities, the local authorities that we needed to talk to, one of the Vietnamese at our church was going to speak to them to ask for their approval, which, it's cleaning up a park for them, so you just expect they're going to say yes. But they said no. And it was 2 days before, we had all these people ready to go, and she said, why? We're like, what? And they said, because if we have foreigners and all these people cleaning up the park, it will make us look bad because we're the ones who are supposed to be, keeping this park clean. And she's like, okay. And for some reason, this girl, her English name is Emily, she was downstairs in our apartment, waiting for somebody or something, and we bumped into her, and she told us what had happened, and we invited her up to our apartment, and we just said, what are we going to do? All we can do is pray, really. So we just prayed, and we just said, God, if this is your will, then please show us why, and what we can do. We prayed, and then I felt a lot of peace about it afterwards. And then I think within 5 minutes, she got a phone call, and she said, the authority that I just spoke to just said yes. They didn't explain why, they just said yes. We can go ahead with the cleanup on Saturday. So it was really amazing how God worked in that instant and kind of really challenged our faith as well.
Amen. Wonderful. I think we can hear how that a lifestyle of faith makes opportunities available, opens doors for the gospel and for the gospel's sake. It's a wonderful story that they're telling. It's a challenging life they're living. I want to challenge you guys to pray for Tim and for Yvette. And we trust that the work that they're doing will just continue and that many more people's lives will be touched and changed through that. It's such a blessing that we as a community have what we have. A blessing and an inspiration to us that we have something to give. You have something to give. Eh? And I want to ask you, before we close today, what we're going to do, we're going to end off the podcast, and then we're going to get some questions from the audience that you might want to find out about living a life like they're living. But I want to encourage you, before we close the session today, just to think about where God has positioned you, where you work, the environment that you are in, the strengths that you have, and how God is using you, and starting to find the need outside your own needs. This morning, we've had a wonderful service up until this point, and there was opportunity for prayer, and we had a time where we can just be with God in worship, and you had an opportunity to just, open your heart and have that individual time with the Lord. But I want to encourage you as well, that you start to look beyond that place and start to find the need in the people around you. And maybe the Lord will show you somebody. Maybe the Lord will highlight a family for you. Maybe there's a specific thing that you're busy with that the Lord will bring into remembrance again. Maybe there's a dream that you had, or a prophetic word that you still have to walk out, that you've not given attention to. And maybe just start to think about those areas and those things, I want to ask you guys quickly, just by mentioning it, there's a lot of different cultures and people around this day in the audience. How many languages are represented in this church? So maybe just shout out the language that you speak, and let's see how many different languages we have in this church. Let's start there right at the back. Somebody there, what is the home language that you guys speak? Daar's Afrikaans daar agter, ja. Somewhere here in the middle, what other languages do we have? We've got, say again? Sevenda. We've got Sevenda, we've got Greek. Somebody else? Siswane, all right. Xhosa. Got Zulu there. Sepedi, we've got that. How are we now? 5. This side? Setswana, yeah. English. Yeah, we've got that one as well. Anybody else? So how many languages do you have represented in your church? How many nations have you got there?
We are an international church, and I think it's around 50. Did you say 52? Yeah.
Wow, hey, we think we're very diverse. Thank God for diversity.
We feel at home here. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I'm saying to them, when I heard they say 50 different nations represented there, we've got some nations. Is there anybody here from another nation that's represented here? I'm from Namibia. Anybody else? Australia, yeah, obviously. Any other place? Yeah? Zimbabwe? Yeah, we've got some Zimbabwean people here. It's interesting how God is bringing together the church, eh? And somebody said to me a few years ago very clearly, if you just open your eyes, you'll see the nations. The nations are all around us, eh? And I love the way that Yvette just spoke about the stroller, getting a connection, and then just being intentional in the way that you deal with that designed moment, eh? So there's many designed opportunities and moments in your day. Hilika, I know that it's a difficult concept for you, but you've got a whole class that God sends into your care, Sometimes she just wants to murder all of them and just flee the country, I think. But we all have such wonderful opportunities, and let's recognize and see that, eh? Let's just give them a final round of applause. If there's anybody here this morning that, something stirred in your spirit and you want there's something in the Holy Spirit, maybe I need to go into a different nation and I need to locate out of this nation into another nation and I want to go live there and I want to be part of such a missionary community, you are welcome to come and speak to them after the service. And for those watching the podcast as well, it's important for me to really just bring into the light this idea of people still laying their lives down in different nations for the kingdom's sake. The voice of reason today is that, stay at home. You don't have to go to any other place. You don't have to, you need to do just the work in your backyard and your community here. But there's a specific purpose and a call on people's lives. And it does make a difference if you go into a nation where there's only about 1% of the people serving the Lord as Christians. Eh? And there's still a need. There's still a saint needed. And maybe it's not for all, but for some, it is so important to hear today that if God is speaking to you about this, don't disregard it. And listen to the voice of the Lord and get to know people like Tim and Yvette and allow the Holy Spirit to propel you to go and do this type of work. Arno is looking very interestingly at this whole conversation. I don't know if Himna knows it, but he feels Bushmanland. Waar die Bushmans bly in die Kalahari. That is sort of his destination very soon. May God bless you guys on the live stream. Wonderful to have had this opportunity. Hopefully we see you soon again. Thank you so much.